Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, Ohio RAM Show. Happy birthday to you. Welcome to the Ohio RAM Show.
Well, it is the 5th anniversary of the Ohio RAM Show, and we want to thank the church choir at Fairview United Methodist Church here in Dayton, Ohio, for their greeting. We thank Barbara Gribler for directing it, and for Io Ogunmekan at the keyboard. And for those of you who are jazz fans, during the little interlude there, you might have heard what you thought was Dave Brubeck's Take 5 on the pipe organ, and you did. We'll hear a little bit more from Io toward the end of the show when he moves over to the piano. Now, I'm awful tempted to take time here to review the last 5 years of the show, but the race across America is only, 6 days away. So we don't have time for that kind of nonsense. And just to get on with it, say this is the Ohio RAM Show, a show about cycling and ultra cycling. And my name is Lee Kreider. I host the show. And we're now in show number 154, spread over 5 years' time. And the Ohio RAM Show is a product of Time Stations 41 in Oxford, Ohio, and Time Stations 42 in Blanchester, Ohio, time stations in the race across America. These time stations are open 24 hours a day during the time the race is passing by us. We have 24-hour food, 24-hour fuel, 24-hour fans, and we are very happy to offer our services to the racers, the crews, the media people, the officials, and particularly those of you who'd like to come and enjoy the race with us. So whether you come by at 3 o'clock in the afternoon or 3 o'clock in the morning, we will be there to greet you, cheer you on. Now this year the race will start in Oceanside, California, on the 13th of June for the solo riders, and then 4 days later on the 17th of June for the teams. That means that we will be opening our time stations on Monday afternoon of the 19th of June. We will stay open around the clock until the last racer passes by, probably sometime on Saturday, June the 24th. So come by and enjoy the race. We're located at the McDonald's restaurants in both towns. You'll get to the McDonald's, look around, you'll see us there. At the end of the show, I'm going to take a little time to give a really quick explanation of how you can figure out when you want to come to see your favorite racer. And by the way, if you'd like to volunteer at one of our time stations, it's quite enjoyable. You'll get to meet racers, crews, and all these people who are associated with the race. I don't know of any other sport where you can actually rub elbows with the people who are doing it. Just go to the Time Station's website, ohioram.bike. That'll also be in the show notes right below the video on the ohioramshow.com website. So on today's show, we're going to go out to Zion National Park. How horrible it must be to live at Zion National Park, but Vic Armijo, who heads up the Race Across America media crews, he will be telling us first of all a little bit about how the media crews are set up, and then he and I will take a look at the race and try to review what we expect to be of interest during this race. As I said, we're always wrong. There's always something else happens that we don't expect. But we'll be looking at the racers, the contests that we see. But before we do that, just let me say I am going to try to post some of the names of the people we mention, along with their pictures, if I can dig a picture up. If you see a hashtag after their name with a number on it, like you see here on Shauna Hogan's photograph, that means at some time I have had them on the Ohio RAM Show. And if you go to ohioramshow.com and search for that hashtag, you will find the show that I did with that particular person. Turns out it's quite a lot. So with that, we're going to go and enjoy Io for just a little bit, and then on out to Zion National Park and Vic Armijo. Well, hi, Vic. How are you today?
Oh, doing good. Busy as always, but doing good.
You're living out there in the beautiful state of Utah?
Yeah, we're in Virgin, Utah, just outside of Zion.
Well, it's an old joke of mine, but I said your photography, it would be great if it weren't all those rocks that are in the road out there.
Yeah, just more red rocks. No matter wherever we go, Bryce, Grand Canyon, you know.
I've never been out in that part of the country, and
Oh, you got to do it sometime.
So, Vic, let's first of all talk a little bit about RAAM Media, what's happening there. And I understand that you have a new title.
Yeah, I'm the media director this year. After this is my 12th year on the road with RAAM. I voiced my opinion about how things should be done one time too many, and now I've got the job.
Well, that can happen to any of us. I've had something like that happen a time or two myself. What's your media crew look like this year? And tell us a little bit about it.
Well, we're going to have 3 media crews on the road. Media 1 will be myself, a talented videographer, and then our driver, Mike Ratcliffe, who is pretty good with a camera and a drone himself. Of course, Mike's been on the road with RAAM before, and our videographer has also been on the road with RAAM. In fact, everybody that's on the media crew this year has been on the road with RAAM either as a crew member or as a member of a particular writer or team's media crew. So it's nice to have people who know the race and know what they're getting into before we leave Oceanside. Media 2 is the team that leaves with the teams on Saturday, the 17th, and that will be Jennifer Magnuson. She was our Durango photographer last year, and then another videographer who is a really good drone pilot. And then in Durango, we're going to have Media 3, which will be Vaughn Davis. That's a name you'll recognize. She raced and finished Race Across the West a few years. She actually works for Canadian Broadcasting in the news department. So this is kind of a busman's holiday for her. She's going to come out and be a cub reporter like she was many years ago. These days, she's an executive upstairs. And so getting in the thick of things again has its appeal for her. And the photographer for her will be Tara Roberts, who's been on the road with us before. And then Tara, when they're done with Durango after the last RAAM riders come through, they're going to follow a little bit, and then Vaughn will go home, and then Tara will fly to the East Coast where she's going to be our finish line videographer. So we've got a good plan in place. We've got some good people. And like I said, everybody that's on the media crew this year has been on RAAM before and knows the event. There's not going to be much of a learning curve. We're going to be able to hit the ground running. And I'm real excited that we're going to have 2 drones out on the course this year. I've always, if only we had a drone. Look at the shot we could get there. And this year we're going to have them. It'll be raammedia.com. That's where you'll see many of our stories, but you'll see them more immediate on RAAM's Facebook. That's really the best place to see our coverage. Our goal this year, instead of doing these long 4-minute segments that we posted once a day, and the truth of the matter, by the time they got them edited and up, a lot of the stuff was 20 hours old. We're going to be trying to do short posts, 1 minute to 2 minutes, as many times through the day as we can, with the video, and then of course my photos and written words, and Vaughn's photos and written words as many times of the day as we can.
Well, I just stand in awe of what you people do, and having had a little bit of experience, as you know, with video and doing some editing and trying to put things together, and to have you guys do that while you're traveling 3,000 miles across the country and trying to get a little bit of sleep. I don't see how you do it, Vic.
You got to have a passion for it. I mean, I've been on a RAAM crew before, and if you're on a well-run crew, you know, you're on for 8 or 10 hours, and then you're off for several hours, and you can go sleep, and then you come back on. On the media crew, we don't do that. I mean, we're up early, and we go until well into the night, and then we go drool on our pillows for 4 or 5 hours and get up and do it again.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll be looking forward to that. And for those of you, we will have the link right below the video here on the OhioRAMShow.com website, where you can click on rammedia.com. Is that correct?
That's correct, and also on Facebook.
And Facebook. I'll put that link on.
More frequently updated and more material there too.
Well, listen, let's get on to the race itself. We're going to hear to talk a little bit about what we see happening, and as I said before, whatever we talk and speculate about, we'll all be wrong when the race gets started.
Sure.
But let's start out with looking at some of the women soloists and talk about them a little bit, Vic.
Okay. Of course, Shauna Hogan is back. Last year, she finished. They finally got a RAAM finish in her second RAAM career. She did break the standard bike women's 50 to 59 record, but Shauna's a competitive lady. She wasn't happy with the margin by which she broke it, and she's coming back to try to whittle off some more hours or a day or whatever's going to make her happy. The big news this year is in the under 50s is Sarah Cooper. I mean, she, a lot of the fans probably know this, but last year she did the race across the West, and she was the overall solo winner. She beat all of the men by a wide margin, and she actually beat a fair number of the teams as well. And she's a mom. She takes care of the home, takes care of the kids, and manages to get in her own training and her taking care of herself. And she's quite disciplined. She doles out every minute of the day by plan. I've interviewed her, and she told me something like, "Okay, I can take your call at 9:20. I've got to be out the door at 9:43." And when I called, she answered on the first ring. But
I had Sarah on the show a couple years ago, and I think she gets up at the wee hours of the morning year round and trains in that Iowa weather.
Penny Barker, she's a delightful lady. Always has a great smile every time I saw her. Of course, I only saw her in the first 150 miles or so, but from the UK, she did RAW last year and qualified for RAAM, and she's coming back. Her goal is to finish. She's herself has said that she doesn't have the speed of Sarah, but that's. Everybody has their own speed and has their own goals, and to finish RAAM is quite a goal in itself. The other two ladies, we have somebody American signed up as Team Stars. I'm not sure who that is. I haven't
Martha
talked
Hall.
with her. Martha Hall, okay.
And I think she's got a pretty good record. I didn't look it up ahead of time, but I think she's got some pretty good wins under her belt.
Yeah, she's on my radar as somebody I do plan on talking to before we get to Oceanside, and I'll find out about her and write a feature on her. And the same with Alexandra Meixner. I haven't spoken with her either. But possibly these two unknowns might bring a battle for Sarah. We'll see. It's going to be an interesting race.
Well, we always hope we see more women in the race. It seems like it's a very difficult thing for them, and probably getting sponsors keeps a lot of people out of it.
Well, a total of 5. That's a pretty good field for recent years. We've had, I think that's about the most we've had in a while. I think the most we've had in the last 10 years is maybe 6 or 7.
Yeah, and I wanted to ask you, Vic, and I didn't compare this. How is the total roster look this year against past years? It looks pretty good just glancing at it. I didn't really count.
Yeah, it's pretty good. I think we're maybe 4 or 5 riders from the record for the most solos, and then the teams are really healthy. Team competition continues to grow. It's just so much more accessible. We're getting a lot more corporate teams. A lot of companies are using it as a bonding thing. They could go on a weekend and go paintball shooting at each other, or they could do RAAM. I think RAAM is probably more fun.
And of course, the charitable fundraising is a big part of the teams. Not also with some of the solo riders, but it's kind of almost ubiquitous with the teams.
It is. It is. And there's been some great charities happening with the teams. Some great charity fundraising happening with the teams. And then on the subject of the teams, something really interesting this year that some of our RAAM fans are going to get into is the return of the Legends of the Road.
I saw that.
Yeah, this is 4 retired motocross motorcycle racers, all of whom have at least 2 U.S. national championships. 2 of them are able-bodied. That's Mickey Diamond and Jeff Ward. Mickey Diamond has 2 U.S. motocross championships and 1 supermoto championship. Jeff Ward has 7 U.S. motocross championships, and after his motocross career, he got into car racing. He actually has a 3rd and I believe a 2nd in the Indianapolis 500. And then the 2 non-able-bodied racers who will be in hand cycles are David Bailey and Doug Henry. David Bailey was the hero of the mid to late 80s, and he had a riding style and a finesse that was just beautiful to watch. I mean, I don't care if you into motocross or not. If you watched him during his heyday and compared him to the other riders, you would just see how effort and fluid his riding style was. To this day, 35 years later after his career, he's still the rider that all of the motocross coaches point to their students. So that's what you want to look like. That's how smooth you want to be. And unfortunately, he was paralyzed in a racing accident in '87, and he went on to be a very competitive challenged triathlete. He's gone to Kona many times. He's won a lot of events in triathlons. Doug Henry, similar story. He was a little later. His career went into the 90s, and they're raising money for charity that helps motorcycle racers who have been injured.
Well, something you brought up there caused my memory to jump, and I'm going to do one of my little rants here, Vic. I
Sure.
really wish anybody out there that's on a team or a solo rider, for goodness sakes, get to the RAAM website and fill out your profile. Get your information out there. It's so frustrating to try to find out about somebody and go there and you don't find anything. And some people do. I wish I had the names if I could give you right off the top of my head that done such a beautiful job with their profiles. But folks, those profiles get looked at. So please fill them out.
And that's what we base a lot of our media coverage on. You know, we look to that first and see who the interesting stories are, and then we pursue them from there. If there's nothing there, we don't know anything about you other than your team name.
Yep. And sometimes we aren't even sure about that.
Yeah. So please get on there. You know, if you want to have your team talked about, if you want to have your charity and your cause talked about, fill it all out. Let us know who you are and why the fans want to be interested in you.
And for goodness sakes, list your sponsors there too. That's
Exactly.
important. I mean, it's so hard to get a sponsor. Let's curry them when we get one. Okay, well, enough of my rant. Let's go on to what I really want to talk about, Vic, is the 50-year-old solo males, but let's put that off and talk about the under 50 group. Let me raise the question. Can anybody beat Strasser?
Well, you never know. You know, there could be a Reto or a Sevi that pops up, but nobody's on our radar as being that unknown who can come in and challenge him. Christoph himself said that Patrick Gruner is probably going to be kind of the revelation of the year. Patrick has finished second in the race around Austria to Christoph a couple of times. I do have an interview scheduled with him, so before we start RAAM, I'll be able to share a bit more about him. He's also Austrian, and you know, a lot of these riders, Austrian, Swiss, German, there's the ultra cycling world is just so active in Europe that when they come to RAAM as a rookie, they don't operate like a RAAM rookie. There's just all of the knowledge, all of the tactics and protocol of what it takes to do RAAM is not an unknown anymore. The internet's just been a big help for these riders because they can learn from those that went before them instead of having to go figure it out for themselves like everybody did, 10, even 5 years ago.
Yeah, well, we had a saying a few years back that said rookies can't win. And then these guys started popping up out of Europe, and that saying is now gone by the board. Yeah.
Of course, we've got Mark Pattinson.
Right.
I think this is his third or fourth time he's come back after saying that was my last one. And he's, he's steady Eddie. He's told me before that I don't go out with blazing speed because I don't have blazing speed. But he's always right there. And, late in the race when everybody else is slowing down, he always seems to find another mile-an-hour average that he uses to close in or to build more of a lead on whoever's chasing him. Yeah, Joe Frank, American rider, he's been a strong member on the U.S. scene for quite a while. Brian Toon, this is his second RAAM. I'm sure he learned quite a bit. I don't recall what his finish was his first time, but it was up there. It was top 10, may have even been as high as fifth or so. And an interesting one will be Andrei Kajlic in a hand cycle. He's going to have his own documentary crew following him. It's been interesting watching him. He's wanted to do RAAM for a while, and he's tried to qualify. He finally did back in Borrego Springs last November at the 24-hour World Championships, and he had a heck of a day there. He had a prototype frame that I don't know if it hadn't been heat treated yet or what, but it broke early on, and he had to switch over to his backup bike, which was a much heavier, not nearly as fast machine, and he still managed to get in his 400 miles.
Yeah, and I did have Andre on the show a while back, and he is such a optimistic kind of guy. I'm glad to see him in there, and we hope that he finishes. And the inevitable happens. Some of our stars of ultracycling age, and some of those we've followed for years now find themselves in the 50 to 59 age category, which is going to make it a real exciting race this year, is it not?
It's the most competitive 50 to 59 we've ever seen. There are 11 riders there. 6 of them have top finishes in the under 50 in recent years. All but 2 have done a RAAM before. We've only got a couple of rookies.
We've got Gerhard Gulowitz. We've got Marco Ballo. We've got, let me look over now. We've got Hoppo in there.
Henning Larsen.
Larson's in there.
Len Forkus.
Forkus. I think he's had a win at some time, didn't he?
Yeah. He won the 50 to 59 in 2012. We could see one of these guys getting second, or heaven forbid, if something goes wrong with Strasser, we could have a 50-plus be our winner.
Fly in the ointment is the possibility of illness or injury or something like that can always throw the race into a loop. We've seen that happen so many times.
Oh, yeah. It can happen to anybody. It's happened to all the best. It happened to Jure Robic. It's happened to Shauna Hogan, a few times. Christoph himself has a couple of DNFs. It's.
Well, I've told my guests already. I said when you DNF on RAAM, you join a very, very high-class company.
A little bit more than 50% of the riders make it to the finish. Riders are coming in knowing more of how to do it than they did years past, so the DNF rate is slowly diminishing.
Better trained. And I was wondering, you do still get Schirmer's neck, but you don't see as much of it as you used to. Are people training for that, or? Yeah,
and they realize that if you're going to be in an aero position, you need to be using that aero position for a long time prior, get all those muscles trained. But this field, though, like you mentioned, Gerhard, this is going to be his 12th consecutive RAAM. He's got 2 second-place finishes, 2 thirds, and a 7th to his credit. He hasn't actually been able to finish for a few years. Last year, He had some issues, digestive issues in Kansas. The year before is when he was hit by a motorcycle in Colorado. But I'd like to see him get to Annapolis. We haven't seen him there in a while. Ballo, he was second in 2006 in the enduro category that they had that year, where you had mandated sleep breaks. He was third in 09 and 11 in 2016, fifth in 2013 and 2014. In 2014, he won the race across the West, and he's been on a two-rider team. So he's as experienced in RAAM as anybody in the field this year, with the exception of Gerhard. Henning, he's got 3 RAAM finishes in the under 50. The last time we saw him was 2015. He got 4th that year. He had a 10-day finish, 10 days, 4 hours, and he's determined to get under 10. Guido Lehr from Germany, we last saw him in 2014. He raced in the under 50s then, did an 11.5-day finish to take 10th place. Been seeing his name a fair number of times in recent years in European events. The first British solo finisher ever was with Hoppo, Chris Hopkinson, back in 2005. And he's got 2 more finishes since then, 2013 and 2014. 2014, he also won the Jure Robic Award for the fastest split time. Oh, what 2 time stations are those? It's Cumberland and Hanover. So it's a lot of climbing in that. So if you're going to go for that award, you really gotta pour out some wattage for in those Appalachian hills. You mentioned Len Forkas a while ago, our 2012 50 to 59 winner. He's a great competitor, heck of a nice guy, but the big story with him is his charity. HelpCam is a nonprofit that he formed, and HelpCam uses webcams and computers to connect school kids that are in the hospital with their classmates back in their own classroom. So they provide computers and the cameras, one in the classroom and one in the hospital room, so that the kid who's sick in the hospital can pretty much partake in his regular school day and see his classmates, and they can see him. He raised a little more than $250,000 in his 2012 RAAM, and his goal this year is to raise $1 million. From Sweden, we've got Aki Haraldsson. We last saw him I think it was last year in the under 50. Yeah, I'm pretty sure in the under 50. Yeah, he DNF'd. He put in about 2,200 miles before he had to pack it in. And we were talking about the teams, the big teams and the corporate teams. And last year we had the EY Legacy Builders put out by the Ernst & Young company. They do a lot of accounting and payroll and money management for huge corporations. And last year they filled in an 8-rider team. And they raised, I forget what the sum was, but it was a considerable amount of money for their mentoring program that helped students from underserved school districts apply to college and go through all of those hoops to get a higher education that some of these inner city kids don't really get the guidance on how to do that. If they want to better themselves, they're kind of left to figure it out on their own. Catalyst of that 8-rider team was Mark Gibson. He's a higher-up executive with Ernst & Young. And he had such a good time being a member of that 8-rider team last year that he's come back as a solo this year. Uros Stoklas, he got 3rd place on a 2-rider team back in 2007 and has wanted to come back as a solo ever since. And this year he finally gets to do it. And finally, we have Johnny Stasholm from Norway. He's a complete RAAM rookie. But he's been doing a lot of ultra cycling at home for years, and he does some of the self-supported events. So he's even though he's a rookie, I think he's going to come in with a good plan and a good crew and a good idea of what he's getting into, and hopefully we'll see a good finish out of him.
Well, just looking on down the list, we have Valerio there again, Valerio Zamboni. He's one of the perpetual ones in the 60-69 age category.
Who just set a number of world records on a velodrome in Italy a few months back. I think it was like 5 or 6 different records, anywhere from the 6-hour, the 12-hour, the 24-hour, the 100-kilometer. And yeah,
he's always there, and we see Sergey's there again from Russia. He's going to put his best effort in, won't he?
Yeah, he comes back every year, and at the rate, every year he seems to get a little farther. At the rate he's going, another 6 or 7 years, we'll see him in Annapolis.
I think he's made it into Kansas, hadn't he? Somewhere into Kansas.
Yeah, I think that was his best. He made it to about halfway. I always make a point of getting some photos and having the videographer get some footage of him in that first 50 miles, because I don't think we've ever seen him beyond that. You know, he goes his speed, and Media One, we're keeping up with the leaders, and we never see him again. In 70 to 74 is our oldest ever finisher, Hervé Talabardon. He finished RAAM at age 69 a couple of years ago, and now he's over 70. If he makes it to Annapolis, and I don't doubt that he will, he'll be our first ever over 70 solo finisher.
Well, thanks a lot, Vic, for joining us. We always appreciate you taking time out to do this, and I enjoyed it great. Without exception, this is probably, I get more hits on this show than anyone we do.
Oh, really? Great.
I guess it's your charming personality, Vic.
Can't be my good looks.
Well, me either, so there must be something going on that we're doing right. Thank you a lot, Vic. We appreciate everything you do, and we'll be looking forward. Hopefully maybe catching you here in Ohio, maybe not, but you know how that goes. We'd love to see you.
All right, Lee. Look forward to seeing you in either Oxford or Blanchester, whichever one you happen to be at.
Okie dokie. Well, thanks again. We appreciate it. Well, that's Io on the piano now with his arrangement of Every Little Breeze Seems to Whisper Louise. Well, thank you, Vic, for the time you took for that. I know you're a very busy person, and we appreciate that. And we'll be looking forward to seeing your video productions during the race across America. In the show notes, you'll see a link to the RAAMmedia.com website. And if some of you are confused when you get there, it looks like ultraracenews.org. And you say, well, that's John Foot's website. Well, John had to give up the newsletter after a number of years. He did a wonderful job there, and RAAM Media is taking that over. Now, to follow the race, when you go to that website, you'll see the tracking tab. Click on that, and you'll see the GPS tracking for every racer in the race, and you can follow them that way. Also, it'll help you to figure out when a racer or a team you might be interested will arrive at a particular time station by going to the RAAM results, and that link is also in the show notes below. Take a look at that page, click on those various drop downs to see what they have to offer. There's a tremendous amount of data there. But let me just give you a little tip. If you look at the time station projections, be a little careful, because those are simply mathematical projections, and as the race moves on, those times will get later and later. So we always tell people here in Ohio, don't pay much attention to those projections until a racer crosses the Mississippi River. I would say until a racer is within about 400 miles of you, don't take those projections too seriously. This is the last regular season Ohio RAAM show for this year, the 2016-2017 season. We hope to have a few shows to offer you during the race across America while it's on. But then we're going to go into summer hiatus, and when we come back in September, instead of 3 times a month, we're going to do the show twice a month on the first and third Thursdays of each month. Thank you again for watching. Thank you for all of your support during these 5 years. We're going to roll on into the 6th season starting in September. We hope to see you then. Have a great summer. Those of you who are racing, have great success in your racing. Most of all, be safe. And with that, until next September, except for a couple visits during the race, we're going to say goodbye.